So you can see I did my homework because I worked for Arianna for 4.5 years. And I'm probably the only interviewer on this book tour who can actually vouch for your sleep schedule. What happens when you don't sleep enough? What happens when you get a lot of sleep? But anyway, you were wonderful to work for either way. So, but I was there, I think it was in 2007, when you really had the impetus to write the book. So tell us about that. Why did you decide to write an entire book on sleep?
Well, first of all, I just love the fact that we're doing this conversation together. You were a phenomenal news editor and truly very much essential to the growth of the Huffington Post. So I feel this kind of motherly relationship. So I feel as though I'm being interviewed.
Well, my mother and sister are in the audience, so thank you.
Oh, and speaking of people in the audience, Nico Pitney, who was also part of the Huffington Post journey, has held every job at the Huffington Post and is still with us right now, helping run our Talk to Me series of children interviewing their parents. Is in the audience, and so is the grandmother of my chief of staff, Sylvia. So, yeah, as you said, Catherine, in 2007, 2 years into us building the Huffington Post, I collapsed from sleep deprivation and broke my cheekbone on the way down. And that was the beginning of this journey of reevaluating my life and also looking around and seeing that there were thousands of casualties of burnout.
Right.
And that burnout is really a kind of the disease of our modern civilization.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went around talking about my last book, Thrive, I saw that everybody really wanted to talk about sleep. It was like the universal theme. People may not have wanted to meditate or be mindful or do yoga or redefine success, but everybody has a relationship with sleep.
Yeah, because we spend half our lives doing it.
Yes. Well, not half, but a third.
Oh, yeah. Depends. You're right. But what do you think has happened with sleep, where we've sort of forgotten? I mean, you talk about there's this sleep revolution. There was the Industrial Revolution. Now we have the information revolution. Things have changed with our relationship to sleep. So.
Yes, what happened is that, and that's what I tried to track, in the book, to explain why did we start devaluing and dismissing sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And why does it matter?
Right.
Because even though the second part of the book is about the tools and techniques and how can you get a really good night's sleep, mm-hmm. I urge everybody not to jump to that part. Because I feel it's imperative that we understand why sleep matters in a very profound way. Not just like, yes, we understand sleep matters, mm-hmm. but all the latest amazing science of why it matters, and also the history of why did we start scorning and dismissing it. And that's what dates back to the first Industrial Revolution,
right.
when we thought that we could treat human beings like machines. And the goal of machines is to minimize downtime. But human beings are not machines. And in fact, I think the myth of creation is kind of a wonderful metaphor that, God worked very hard and created heaven and earth. It took 6 days. And then she took the 7th day off. And I think that was a very powerful message. I mean, after all, God is omnipotent, so theoretically, God did not have to take a day off.
Right.
So I think it was really a message to us, a message which we have ignored. And that's why I love the whole idea of the Shabbat. Whether you're Jewish or not, I think it's an incredibly profound idea. Kind of disconnecting from your world, disconnecting from your work, and acknowledging that we are more than our jobs.
Right.
And in a sense, if we don't have a recognition of that, it's much harder to go to sleep. Mm-hmm. Because it's much harder to let go of the day, to let go of our incompletions, of our worries about the future, if we think that's all we are, kind of a bundle of our to-do list, our concerns about the future, our responsibilities. instead of recognizing that however magnificent our job, there is still something more magnificent in us. And sleep is a gateway to that mystery.
Right. No, I love it. In the book, you talk about how the Egyptians had sleep temples.
And
then you
the
talk
Greeks.
about, right, and you talked about figures in history that some people, well, some of them thought they were omnipotent. Some of them could have gotten more sleep. You mentioned like Napoleon maybe could have won Waterloo.
Yes,
That was a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Napoleon was one of the great figures who dismissed sleep, and look what happened to him. He didn't have a good ending.
Let's talk about some characters out there who think they're omnipotent right now, who are clearly not getting enough sleep. Wait, yeah, how does that? We could even predict. What do you think is going to happen in November based on certain candidates' sleep profiles, if you will?
Well, I think one of Donald Trump's greatest contributions to our collective cultural life is going to be the fact that he's Exhibit A of what happens to a human being when they're sleep deprived. Because, parents, I think, in future generations are going to be showing their children tapes of Donald Trump and saying, if you don't get your sleep, you're going to be like Donald Trump. Because honestly, he brags that he only needs and gets 4 hours sleep a night, that he sleeps with his phone because he basically has to regularly retweet Mussolini and other greats. And he displays all the symptoms that the American Academy of Sleep Medicine describes as symptoms of chronic sleep deprivation: inability to process even short information, outbursts of anger, mood swings, paranoid tendencies, constant regurgitation of incoherent pablum.
This is like you're writing a campaign ad for whoever the general is.
It sounds like a splash for the Huffington Post.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Catherine
I hope
was
it
the
is.
master of splashes.
Yeah. Those were insaner times. So let's talk about some politicians that have gotten enough sleep. You talk about Winston Churchill in the book, which was very interesting because
Yes, Winston Churchill came up with the term power nap. And he really believed that if you had a nap in the middle of the day, it gave you, in a way, 2 days. It kind of restored you and reset your day. And he did win the Second World War, so he knew something.
he did, but he didn't have an iPhone. So
Yes.
what do you think? I mean, yes.
Well, that's
He would-
actually a big problem. I think we talked about the connection between our sleep crisis and the first industrial revolution, but it's really the third industrial revolution, the digital revolution, that has turned us all into addicts to our technology and to our devices, that has made it so much harder to disconnect and go to sleep. And that's why it requires really convincing ourselves of the importance of sleep before we are going to be willing to turn off our devices. At least I recommend 30 minutes before we turn off the lights. And now, if you are at the moment sleeping with your phones, how many of you are sleeping with your phone by your bed?
Oy.
About half, would you say?
Yeah. Well, the ones that are telling the
So-
truth.
So, okay, that's of all the tools and techniques in the book, that's the most important one. Charge your phone as far away from your bed as you can, ideally in another room, because you need that transition. Those of you who are parents, like
Yes.
Catherine and me, know that you don't put your little 2-year-old daughter in bed without a transition. You know,
Right.
you give her a bath, you sing her a lullaby, you put her in her PJs. We don't do any of that to ourselves. We just literally are on our phones until the last moment, then we turn off the light. And our bodies are exhausted, but our brains are still going. So even if we fall asleep, our brains wake us up in the middle of the night. So really, even if all you cared about is your job and your productivity, you're going to be infinitely more productive if you establish a little transition to sleep with microscopic steps. I don't believe in starting in a big way, but taking tiny steps, like 5 minutes before you're going to turn off the lights, turn off your devices and charge them outside the bedroom. And then little by little you develop a full little ritual.
Well, the book has a good 12-step program in there where you really,
Yes.
But you're doing this at Huffington Post. The nap pods have become famous. I mean, what are the things? There's people in the audience that are obviously running companies. It's a productivity issue.
It is.
To really make sure people are sleeping. So tell
We
us
have
about
two
that.
nap rooms at the Huffington Post, and when we first launched them in 2011, there was a lot of skepticism. People were reluctant to be seen going into a nap room in the middle of the day, in the middle of the city that never sleeps, New York, in the middle of a bustling newsroom. Now they're perpetually full. We need to open a third one. And also, we have certain ground rules in terms of our relationship with technology. Like at the end of each day, we let all our employees know that they are not expected to be available and on email after hours. If there is something urgent, we'll call them or text them. And we really believe that this gives us the best quality of employees, of their talents, of their energy when they come back in the morning recharged. Because you can come to the office and be completely zombie-like and not really engaged in your work and not really creative. It's not about hours at your laptop. It's about the energy you bring to it and the level of creativity. And all these are degraded.
Right.
When we are exhausted.
Yeah. No, you talk about in the book how we've formed this relationship with sleep where it's macho to not sleep. So there's almost this industrial complex that gets us to have more Ambien and more, to convince us that we need to be drugging ourselves. So it's very interesting. The whole Starbucks on every corner
And I love coffee, but the question is, having coffee after 2 p.m. to keep you going is what then interferes with your sleep cycle. And increasingly, I was with Travis Kalanick this afternoon, who is the founder and CEO of Uber, because we've partnered in a campaign against drowsy driving. And he was telling me how when he was a young entrepreneur, he thought, as you said, that it was the macho thing to do to stay up all night. He said, I had failure after failure after failure. Once somebody succeeds, people forget the failures along the way. And he said, now I realize that if I don't get enough sleep, I'm not as effective at running Uber. And that's the message that we need to get out there, that sleep is a performance enhancer. It's not like you give up sleep in order to be super productive. You give us sleep and you degrade your productivity. And I was interviewing today Andre Iguodala from the Golden State Warriors. Any Golden State Warriors fans here? Well, he attributes his MVP status and the success of his team to the fact that he changed his sleep habits and that he gets a full 8 hours and that he protects his sleep as the biggest thing he needs to do every night to be at his best. And I think that's what we need. We need people who are very successful at what they do, who kind of really testify to the power of this completely legal performance-enhancing drug.
my favorite example in the book was when you talked about how Larry Page came up with Google in a dream.
I know, don't you love that?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Let It Be was the result of a dream. Do you like that song? In a dream, every single stanza.
Yeah, no, it's great. There's lots and lots of examples, inspiring people to go to sleep more in the book.
And also having a little dream book by your bed. I have a dream book and a flashlight so that I can use it so that I don't have to turn on the lights, because then it helps you remember your dreams more. And it's really also so much fun. Now I go to sleep and I kind of have to look forward whatever is going to be the movie that night.
So do you have any that you want to share with us?
Oh, actually, I have a recurring dream that I love, and it has gotten more and more laborious through the years. And so I'm on this train, and I'm going home to God. I believe in God, so I'm very comfortable using that word. But if you're not, you can just say you're going home. And in my compartment in the train is my family and my closest friends. And the train keeps going on, and there is scenery along the way. And some of it is beautiful scenery, and some of it is ugly scenery, which through the many iterations of this dream I recognize to be a metaphor for my life. That, sometimes there are good things happening, and sometimes there are bad things happening. But as long as I recognize that life is a journey and we keep moving and I don't cling to the good or the bad things, it's an absolutely amazing journey. But there is a catch, which is that if you realize that there is somebody on your train who is kind of a toxic human being, you got to get them off your train at the next station.
That's good.
It's like, basically, it's the ground rule we have at the Huffington Post about hiring, which is no brilliant jerks allowed.
No, really. That's great. Well, I feel like a lot of us have the same recurring dream, but in different stages in life. So not that one. For years, I had a dream that I was always late to an exam at college,
Yes.
or that I never got into college in the first place. That was always the terrifying dream.
Even after you got into college.
Oh, even after I got into college, and I never even showed up for my SATs, or there was a class, and so we share a lot of these anxiety dreams, which is really interesting that we all sort of do the same thing when we're in our beds alone at night, or
Not
someone else. Which is actually something else you mentioned in the book.
Actually, that's a very important point. The question of sleeping with a partner. It can be very complicated. And I think this is a conversation we need to have. Because people in America, I'm Greek, as you probably gather from my accent, and in Europe it's a little different. But in America, there is this assumption that if you don't sleep together every night, no matter whether your partner snores, is sick, wakes up early in the morning, goes to bed with their iPad, no matter how disrupted your sleep is because of your partner, you got to sleep with them. Otherwise, it's some kind of magical proof that you don't love them, or that your marriage is on the rocks, or you're not having sex. And none of that is true. The worst thing you can do for your relationship is sleep in a way that disrupts your sleep, that does not give you recharging sleep, so you wake up resentful, irritable, tired, and you take it out on your partner. So I highly recommend that the most important thing is you get good sleep, whatever it takes. If it means sleeping in another bedroom, sleep in another bedroom. I was doing a podcast on Sunday, and the host said to me, I like the temperature in a room at 60. My wife likes it at 70. I cannot sleep at 70. I sweat. He said, I have this terrible night, and I resent my wife, and our sex life has deteriorated. She said, we don't have a second bedroom, but I've built a tent in the terrace.
Well, what I found very interesting is you said that women actually do sleep better after. That's the one time women sleep better is after sex,
Right.
which is very interesting. But women sleep, they don't sleep as well if there's a man in their bed. So that
Unless they have had sex.
Oh, okay. Because that totally defied everything about the whole cuddle myth in women. So I thought that was sort of news breaking, but maybe I didn't read it right.
So, they've done all these studies. So they've done all these incredible studies around sleep. It's an amazingly fertile science right now, and it's all very new because
Right, which is crazy.
the first scientific sleep center was founded at Stanford in 1970. And now there are 2,500 scientific sleep centers in this country alone. So we get amazing new scientific findings every week. And for me, one of the most fascinating ones came out last year, actually, about what happens in the brain during sleep. Because we used to think that sleep was a time of inactivity, and now we have learned that sleep is a time of frenetic activity, and that in fact sleep has only two modes. The brain has two modes, either asleep and cleaning up, or alert and awake.
Right.
So all the toxins that build in the brain through the day have to be washed away at night during sleep. Otherwise, it's incredibly dangerous. They have now linked the proteins that accumulate between the cells in the brain that lead to Alzheimer's with sleep deprivation. So if you see there's a connection between the sleep deprivation epidemic and the Alzheimer's epidemic. So that's why I'm recommending that you read the science chapter, because then it's very convincing about why it matters.
And it's reversible. I mean, you can,
Yes.
if you start, well, speaking of toxins in the brain, you talk about teenagers and how much, I don't have a teenager yet, but you've had teenagers. And you talk about the Dracula hormone.
Yes.
That teenagers literally have a Dracula hormone where they want to stay up all night, but you should let your teenager sleep in the morning.
Well, yes, in fact, the teenagers have a different circadian rhythm than we have. So if you ask your teenager to get up at 7 in the morning, it's like asking me to get up at 4 a.m. So the reason why that matters is because we need to change start times for school, for college classes, and there are whole movements now around the country to do that. And we are doing a whole college outreach campaign. We're going to 100 colleges. I'm not going to all of them personally, but I was at Stanford yesterday. I'm going to be at USC tomorrow. I was in Denver on Friday. We really want to reach that demographic because that's the time when all these bad habits are put in place. And we see what's happening now in colleges. It's not just how much their health is affected, it's also how much their mental health is affected. They have found that sleep deprivation is at the heart of a lot of the problems in colleges with depression, anxiety, binge drinking. So changing how we view sleep has been incredibly important. We've partnered with many brands that are offering free things from pajamas to earplugs to masks to white noise machines to college students to help them improve their sleep.
And are the administrations there?
Oh yes, we're working with the wellness departments or the mental health departments. It's different in each college, but it's been an amazing campaign that we've been building for the last few months. And if you go to my Instagram or my Facebook, you'll see kind of pictures of college students. It's just really exciting to see this kind of new awakening around sleep.
Yeah, it's good. I did not sleep for 4 years at college, so I wish your sleep tour had happened then. So I think we're taking questions at some point, but I don't know if it's now. Jordan will tell me. I don't know.
Do we have a mic?
Oh, it's not time? Okay. I was hoping you could give us some very specific tips about how everybody can go to sleep tonight so that we can.
So I can give you my personal ritual, but I strongly recommend that you look at all the different techniques and little steps for going to sleep and create your own ritual. Try things and see what works for you. But mine is now 30 minutes before I'm going to go to sleep, turning off all my devices, charging them outside my bedroom, lowering the lights in the bedroom and the bathroom, and having a very hot bath with Epsom salts and flickering candles.
Can you tell us more?
Well, it's for me, water is like a purification ritual. It like washes away the day. If you don't like baths, you can have a shower. It's just basically the water being like a demarcation line. As the Bible says, the evil of today is enough. What's done is done. What's left undone is left undone and will be done tomorrow. There's nothing I can do about it tonight. And this is the time for me to actually go to sleep and fully recharge. And so the other thing is, I used to sleep in my gym clothes. And the brain gets confusing messages. Are we going to the gym or are we going to sleep? So now I have, night shirts or PJs or even a T-shirt that is not used for the gym, and temperature in the summer mine is kind of 67 degrees that I love, and in bed I only read physical books, and I read nothing that has to do with my work. I read nothing about politics or media. I read poetry or philosophy or novels. And if you take the sleep revolution to bed, I will consider it a personal victory if you fall asleep while you are reading it.
Well, I mean, I had lunch with, so it's wonderful to hear that, and I'll practice that tonight. But I had lunch with a woman, an executive today, who said, I can't believe that she can actually sleep so much with the career she's had. Like, how does she actually do it? And I'm sure you get asked that all the time because you've written 15 books and run a big company and travel all the time. So are you able to keep the schedule, or what happens when you travel? I mean, I know you're always on the road.
Well, first of all, as you can see from my social media, I'm not exactly chilling out under a mango tree. So it's not as if, I think that's really what I want to stress, that when you get enough sleep, you can get more things done because you're more present, you're more alert, you can see shortcuts, you can solve problems faster. So everything gets better and you can do more. And most important, if you're running a company, you can see the icebergs before they hit the Titanic. You can see opportunities. You can see red flags. You don't waste time hiring the wrong people. All the things that happen when you are tired that make your life harder. I don't know if you've been to New York and seen Hamilton, the fabulous musical. Yes? I know, amazing.
Wow, lots of people.
So, Hamilton is another cautionary tale. I don't know if you remember, the moment when everything turns. You know how in dramas you have that turning point moment when he falls for the seductress. And he thinks that I haven't slept for a week. And his wife had tried to get him to go away, to have a break. The guy was completely sleep deprived, exhausted, falls for the seductress, and then everything goes downhill. He's exposed, he gets...
Right, so it's all back to sleep, yeah.
It's really back to burnout. It's back to being connected with our center, with our wisdom, with our strength, and not operating from fumes and the surface of our lives. And one of my favorite stories in the book is about FDR. In 1940, there was all this pressure on him to enter the war, but the American public was very much against it. So he didn't know how to square the circle. He didn't know what to do. So what he did is he went on a naval ship. He took 10 days off and went on a naval ship in the Caribbean to think and refuel. And Eleanor was sending him letters with things like, I'm so happy to think of you sleeping and refueling. And at the end of these 10 days, he came up with his political masterpiece, which was the Land-Lease program that allowed America to enter the war. We have big problems we're facing, and they're not going to be solved by exhausted, burned-out politicians. You know, people need to go to a deeper place to solve big problems, to come up with big ideas. And that's what is missing. I mean, look at what happened with the financial collapse. You know, the financial sector is notoriously sleep-deprived and exhausted. The Citibank motto used to be, "Citi never sleeps." Well, maybe if they had slept, they would have seen the icebergs before they hit the Titanic. I mean, you had executive after executive who said, "I had no idea." Yeah. Well, where were you? Burned out and missing the point.
Well, Goldman Sachs now doesn't let their interns stay past midnight. That's big. But
you know, it's significant that companies that were at the center of burnout are making changes. The tipping point for me came 10 days ago when there was a study by McKinsey in the Harvard Business Review, and the headline was, "The Proven Link Between Effective Leadership and Sleep," by McKinsey. And it walked you through what happens to the prefrontal cortex of the brain where the executive functions are housed when you're sleep deprived and how degraded they become. And the funniest part was that the article was co-written by their chief learning officer and a woman who was described as a McKinsey sleep specialist. Now, that sounded like an Onion headline. The idea that McKinsey had someone helping executives sleep as opposed to helping executives not sleep is very new. And that's part of the sleep revolution and the tipping point we're going through.
Oh, so you think like we have diversity chiefs now, we're going to have sleep chiefs soon?
We're going to have sleep chiefs, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. You also had a great line that the nap room will be the next conference room.
I believe that every workplace is going to have a conference room and a nap room.
Yeah, and hopefully more flexible work schedules.
Definitely.
Too, especially for
you're
women.
working on that. That's why I love what you're
Power
doing.
to fly.
Yes. Power to fly is very much about that. How can you have a sustainable life and be able to combine your work and your life without burning out? That's why I love what you're doing, and we're working together on it.
Yes.
And anybody here who's invested in her, you're very lucky.
Yeah, well, there are some of them in the audience. It's because you talk a lot about women, actually, and this is what we do, about how women are especially affected by sleep as they're in the workplace and they're doing work at home. And
that's why I think we see so many women burning out and leaving the workplace. And I feel that this is kind of a feminist issue, that if women were able to do their jobs in a sustainable way, they would stay, and it would be great both for the bottom line and for their lives.
Yeah, definitely. We need a campaign of good sleepers out there. I think you talk about, I love the examples that Roger Federer, we need more women in the campaign, but I have some male examples, that Roger Federer, when he was competing in Wimbledon, rented a separate house from his family so that he could sleep. And that LeBron James does 12 hours a day, which is amazing.
Well, before game days, I think what happens is that the more intense your game and your practice, the more you need recovery.
Right.
So in a way, the more high-flying you are, the more you're at a very intense period in your life, the more essential recovery is, whatever it is you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Good. Are we doing questions, or? I have a secret clock here, so.
So how do?
And I know bedtime is soon, so I don't want to. This is very, very important.
And when you get the microphone, please let us know your name and what you do, and if you want, you can tell us how many hours of sleep you got last night.
Question over here to your right.
Oh gosh.
I'm very eager to ask a question because I can hold it. It's okay. Oh, okay.
It's my sister, everybody.
I'm Kathy's sister, but I have I'm the first one. Anyway, I have a question. It's essentially about how to say no so that you can get a lot of sleep. And I know this because I lived with Catherine when she worked at the Huffington Post, and she was 6th employee. And I know she was so eager to please and so eager, especially when you're just starting out, you just really want to prove yourself. So do you have any advice, especially for people who are ambitious and eager to succeed, on how to say to yourself that you need to step back, but also how to explain to people that you work with that you just need to step back?
That's a fantastic question, and I think learning to say no, whether it's to employers or to friends or to ourselves, is absolutely central to this. And if you think of it, it has to do with what you are saying yes to. So if you put it positively, for me, what's made it easier is I'm saying yes to the way I want to live my life. I want to live my life fully present, bringing vitality and joy to what I'm doing, and gratitude for all the blessings in my life. And when I'm sleep deprived, I don't bring any of these things to my life. I instead bring a cranky, irritable, overreactive, zombie-like human being, and I don't like that part of myself. We all have it though. So because I'm drawn like a magnet to how I want to be in my life, how I want to show up for my work, for my family, for my friends, it's easy for me to say no. I mean, a friend gave me a great book party last night that you both were at. It was fantastic. I would have loved to then go to dinner with friends whom I hadn't seen for a long time, but I had to get up super early today to start doing a media tour, so I went to bed. Mm-hmm. You may think that's a sacrifice, but trust me, the alternative would have been for me to be completely exhausted through the day and not be really present and enjoying being here with Catherine and with you. And that's not worth it. So if you reframe saying no, that it's not really saying no, it's really saying yes to the things that matter to you and to the things you prioritize, everything changes. And I have one other little rule, which is, you know how often you start projects in your mind about things you want to do, but you never start them or complete them, and these things drain energy. Even if you don't do anything about them, they drain energy in your head. So I do a regular inventory, and I have this little motto that says you can complete a project by dropping it. So that's how I completed becoming a good skier, for example. I really wanted to become a good skier. I'm a lousy skier. I realized I would never really invest enough energy and time to become a good skier. So I decided the project is complete. And now when I go skiing with my daughters or friends, I sit by the fire, drink hot chocolate, and read a good book, and they ski. So look at what is it in your life that you are not going to really care enough about to invest energy, and consider it done. Even if it's a book. You know how often you accumulate books or you start them and you're not really interested? Drop it.
Next question on your left.
That was a wonderful answer. I'm Yolanda, and I like to get at least 8.5 hours of sleep.
Yes.
I'm a health coach and a body worker, and I have lots of clients who are addicted to sleeping pills. And I noticed that you mentioned that here. Could you just talk about that a little bit and how I should advise them?
So, first of all, I think we need a campaign to stop allowing the advertising of sleeping pills on television. We are one of only 2 countries in the world, New Zealand being the other one, that allows advertising of sleeping pills. Because you have all these amazing, beautiful pictures of people walking in fields carefree, while some soothing voice is reading 92 incredibly dangerous warning symptoms. Like, you may commit suicide, or you may you may feel tired the next day. If you read them, I have them in the book, or you may get in your car and kill somebody without realizing it, but hey, you're going to get some sleep. So people go immediately to sleeping pills because they don't realize how many alternative, natural ways there are to go to sleep. And I have dedicated an entire section to alternative ways to get to sleep, ranging from acupuncture, breathing, meditation, hot baths, to if you have like an extreme case of insomnia, it has been proven that cognitive behavioral therapy is as effective without adverse consequences. So it's kind of lazy to me to go to a sleeping pill. And it's also ignorant. I'm not talking about occasionally, like, you have a traumatic experience, you're very jet lagged. I'm talking about chronically. I'm talking about people who take a sleeping pill every night and cannot sleep otherwise. The consequences of that are very dangerous in terms of your health, in terms of the propensity for Alzheimer's. You'll read all the data and the facts. And then it's like realizing there are alternative ways. And I think there are scientists now at UCLA like Jerome Siegel who think that we'll wake up one day and feel about sleeping pills the way we feel about tobacco. Have you seen any of the 1950s advertising for tobacco? You actually had doctors in white coats saying things like, I recommend menthol cigarettes because they refresh your throat. And so that's really where we are right now.
Next question up here.
Hi, I'm Alison Van Diggelen, and I love this discussion. It's such an important message, but to create a true sleep revolution, I feel this message is targeted at the 1%, at the well-off community. How are you going to make it a true revolution for all the people?
That's a very good point. I have a whole section in the book about that, and actually 10 days ago I held a clinic in Harlem in a church to talk to people who are struggling to put food on the table, who have 2 or 3 jobs, about sleep and to answer their questions. And the most heartbreaking thing about that is that a lot of the people I talked to really believed that the fact that they were only sleeping for 4 hours a night and that they were exhausted the next day, it was their fault. That somehow if they were like the high energy, high flying people they had read about on Wall Street, they would be able to do their life on 4 hours of sleep. But what was very obvious is that even with 2 or 3 jobs, they had discretionary time that they were misusing. And let me give you an example. There was this woman whom actually we then had on Dr. Oz's show to talk about it, who was a pastry chef and a babysitter. She had 2 jobs. And she said to me, I come home at the end of my jobs, and this is my time. This is the time for me to watch my shows. And she said, so I will watch my favorite shows for 4 hours, and then I fall asleep watching television. And then the television would wake her up at some point. And then she said I would have trouble going back to sleep, and I would go to the kitchen and eat sweets. So she was in her 30s, overweight, with diabetes. Mm-hmm. So you see the vicious cycle. Now, there's a lot that has to be done at the political level, with minimum wage, with job availability. But sleep is something available and free, if only we increase awareness about its value, which means actually you cannot watch your shows. I mean, I haven't watched House of Cards. I mean, I would love to. I mean, I've watched 1 episode so that I can understand what they're talking about. But I'm prioritizing sleep. And what I said to her is, please prioritize sleep, no TV when you get back. do some transition, go to sleep, because if you are going to be sleep deprived, your body craves all the wrong things. We've all been there. Your body craves carbs and sugar. And just this simple thing, she came and talked to us how it's begun to transform her life.
Next question all the way at the top.
Thank you. My name is Amy, and I'm a nurse. And thank you for this talk. It's so brilliant and interesting and really fun. My question, I can fall asleep in like 5 seconds and do all the time. And I don't actually require like 7 hours, but I wake up every night in the middle of the night. And I just know if you have any recommendations for like the best way to fall back asleep.
Yes, well, it starts with the transition. What's your transition to sleep?
Honestly, I close my eyes. It's like 2 seconds. I don't need a transition. I am half asleep by the time I get to bed.
Okay. Your body may not need a transition, but your mind needs a transition. What wakes you up in the middle of the night is not your body. Your body is still tired. What wakes you up is your mind. Our mind is an incredible chattering instrument that goes around like a monkey, regurgitating what happened during the day, judging, worrying. And we need to slow it down. So I urge you to create a little ritual that puts you to sleep. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, as it still happens to me, not to stress about it, but to consider it as a time to do things that have nothing to do with your work. The worst thing you can do is go to your phone, or turn on the lights, or turn on the TV. What I do is I prop up myself in bed and meditate. If you don't meditate, I have an index in the book with 12 meditations you can play on your iPod, not on your iPhone, because your iPhone is charging far away from your room, right? And I promise you, I've listened to hundreds of tapes to pick those 12 meditations. And there are 2 I have never heard to the end, because they always put me to sleep. So you have to become a little bit like your own scientist. You may hate the ones that put me to sleep, and you may love something that I hate. And that's really part of the experimentation. It doesn't matter how hokey it is. If it does it for you, use it. We have a great meditation that my sister, actually, who sounds just like me, reads. We have the text in the book, but if you go to my book website, ariannahuffington.com, you can actually play it. And it's incredibly soothing, and it's designed to kind of slow down the brain and get you into a deeper sleep rhythm.
Next question up here.
My name is Therese Pouliot. Thanks for being here. I find your sense of humor wonderful. It's very funny. I have a bit of a problem. I tend to turn into a very busy bee after 11 o'clock. I wake up. Life is wonderful. I become productive. I can stay up till 3 o'clock reading or putzing around, and very visual. And I have found that it's been a sort of a problem many years, and I think I do need sleep. So what I have found, I'm not seeing a psychiatrist or psychologist or a counselor. I found a wellness coach that actually is helping me sleep. And not helping me sleep on the phone, but once a week we talk, and she's advised many of what you've just mentioned in your book. It's wonderful. I mean, you might know her. Great ideas, and it's helping. So I don't know if somebody needs a little help. You don't need to spend a psychiatrist. It's $25 an hour, and I'm actually going to sleep at 11 o'clock instead of 2 and 3.
Wow,
it's
that's
wonderful.
Fantastic.
It's
that's
a wonderful
fabulous. What's
thing.
her name?
Well, there's several. It's they are actually well educated. It's not a life coach. That's not after
It's
months.
different ones.
Very different. It's wellness. And
That's fantastic. I would love to know about it. I'll give you my email address, which is Arianna.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Arianna@huffingtonpost.com. In fact,
I got it.
and let me know about it, because we can invite them to write about it, to make the service available to others. I think that's fantastic.
As a matter of fact, she does give, they do have workshops
great. I think that's a very,
wonderful.
very useful
Thank you.
service. And also, I would love you to write about it, to write your story, because you see, I think the great thing about the new science and all these things like wellness coaches is that it is incredibly optimistic and full of hope about restoring sleep to its proper place in our lives in an easy, manageable way. When I say easy, it doesn't mean it will happen overnight. It doesn't mean that it's a kind of linear progression, but it means that it's doable. And it's doable with small microscopic steps. And anybody who wants to write about your story, we'd love to have this conversation on HuffPost, to have a dedicated sleep section. And it has all the latest information. And anyway, I'd love to invite you. All right, Catherine, you know I love inviting new bloggers on HuffPost.
Yes.
We have time for 3 more questions. The next question is all the way back here at the top.
Oh, wow, lots of
Yes, hello, my name is Cameron. I'm a realtor here in the city, and as such, I sort of have a lot more freedom with my sleep schedule than a lot of people, I'd say. I guess my question would be, there are a lot of people who don't, and my question in particular pertains to young people who don't have a lot of control in a lot of ways over their schedules. How would a young person go about affecting this change in paradigm that is required for this sleep revolution?
Well, let's take college students. I mean, these are one of the most sleep-deprived and stressed out young demographic. And the reason why they're so sleep-deprived is not that they don't have control over their schedule. They have a lot of control over their schedule. Is that they have FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. And they feel that if they're not checking social media compulsively and refreshing to see if they got 2 more likes, they are going to be left behind. And I think part of the lesson here is that we are missing out when we do that. We are missing out on our lives. We are sleepwalking through our lives. And if you talk to people who've created these digital technologies, they will tell you, after a glass of wine, that they intended it to be addictive. It's not an accident. It's not an accident that we are all seeking self-validation through social media and become compulsive about it. And that's why we need to kind of set boundaries ourselves, because otherwise these technologies were intended to completely invade our lives and consume more and more of our lives. And that often comes at the expense of our sleep.
Next question up here to your right.
Hi. I wonder if you have advice for long-distance international air travel and jet lag, and particular big time differences like 9 to 16-hour time differences.
Yes, actually, I do have a section in the book on that. Next week, on the 19th, actually, we're taking over a flight from New York to Las Vegas, a JetBlue flight. And our passengers have been warned that they can change flights if they don't want to get a lecture on sleep. And personal consultations, and we have a physical therapist on board who is going to work with people. Sometimes you have aches and pains on planes that can make it harder to sleep. We are running a competition at the moment on social media. If you follow the hashtag Sleep Revolution, where you can win seats on the flight, and the Marriott Hotel is offering free nights. And Airbnb is also offering a fabulous Las Vegas apartment. So what we're trying to prove is that actually on planes there are certain things never to do if you're going on a long distance flight and want to minimize the problems with jet lag, which are very real. One of them is to avoid alcohol and caffeine on the plane, which are incredibly dehydrating, to drink an enormous amount of water. I mean, as you can see, I'm How much water have you drunk, Catherine?
Oh, we used to. Yes, you can see there's not much
I've
left.
drunk almost the entire. Would you like some water?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Perfect.
So, because the more hydrated you are, the easier to combat the effects of jet lag. To move, unless you're sleeping, to move on the plane. I have some little simple yoga exercises I do on the plane. People look at me askance, but who cares? I feel better. And I personally, even when I travel first class, I dislike airline food intensely. And so I travel with my own food. I bring, simple vegetables or fruit or organic nuts or things, things that are like healthy.
Yeah.
And try not to eat too much because, again, you give your body time to...
Yeah, and it's so salty always on the...
Yes,
yeah.
To digest. And finally, bring with you all the essential things for sleeping on the plane, which are obviously starting with a good eye mask, good earplugs, or I prefer noise-canceling headphones. If you have a favorite pillow on a long flight, it's worth taking it with you. It's incredibly important, as much as possible, to avoid red eyes, especially between San Francisco and New York, say. And there are a lot of little things like that make a big difference. I won't go through the whole list I have in the book, but there are techniques, but you have to be very disciplined about it because... And here's the last and most important thing. When you arrive after a 16-hour flight, don't set up a meeting. Go to your hotel, have a shower, and go to sleep for a few hours. It's essential. You have no idea how many CEOs and senior executives have arrived in Tokyo or Seoul, South Korea, or wherever. After a long flight, they go straight to a meeting and they fall asleep.
Yeah. And they brag about it too.
Yeah, and while people who've worked, for weeks to prepare their PowerPoints and the presentations have a sleeping CEO in front of them.
The last question is on your left.
Hi, my name is Lydia. I'm 32. I'm a mother of 2. You've been talking here about burning out, about not being productive at work. But what about the other side of our lives when we're waiting for our husbands to come home and then we get our kids to bed and then we have those precious 2 or 3 hours of, I don't know, like news, like chatting, like even watching shows, and then we end up at 12 p.m. and then we have to wake up at 5, 6. So the question is how we should schedule our lives with husbands, with our partners, to have, as you have already said, my own time, adult talk, like, telling news, like sharing love, I don't know, whatever. So, but just to be 2 of us, like to have our own time. And it happened like, as for me, after you, I think I'll reconsider my life, but when I came here, I was still thinking about that. We're kind of, wasting our, as you have started your conversation, that we spend almost a third of our lives like for sleep. And as for me, I'm thinking that it's like wasting of our life. So I just want to live more, but I know that we need to sleep to live more, but it's kind of confusing. So the question is how to spend our time with our partners and to make it effective and to make it productive, not only our work. So if it's only the time after work.
So, well, the question I want to ask you is, how do you feel in the morning? Do you feel that you rested and recharged?
No, but But I think that you can divide people to owls and those who are really great at mornings. As for me, I'm not the morning person. I need at least 2 or 3 hours to restart my body. But around 11 a.m. I'm pretty cool. So
it's like we just heard your story about another night owl. I have a story of my sister in the book who was a night owl. And she would always be sluggish in the morning. It would take her a while to get started, and she wouldn't be as productive. So I'm not. I couldn't manage my life going to bed at the same time every night. I'm being realistic. Mm-hmm. But every scientist will tell you that going to bed before midnight is optimal. These are kind of the optimal hours. But what is the most important thing is getting the full amount of sleep that you need. Even if, let's say, you go to sleep at 1 or 2 for whatever reason, you're out at a party or something happens, try to arrange your life the next day to get the sleep you need. If it is 7 hours, 7 hours. If it is 8 hours, 8 hours. And that is really the key. And I can't really stress that enough. For me, the best metaphor was Professor Ronneberg. He's the most distinguished sleep scientist in Germany. And he said to me, it's really like putting the laundry in the laundry machine. You have to complete all the cycles. He said, waking up before you've completed all your sleep cycles is like taking the laundry out of the laundry machine before it's done. You end up with dirty and wet laundry. So it's like we wake up like dirty and wet laundry. I mean, it's not funny. And that's why I think you need to make these decisions. If you want to spend 2 or 3 hours watching the shows and talking with your husband and doing all these things, organize it like over the weekend. Or make it half an hour, or make it 45 minutes. Just do something that then allows you to wake up fully refreshed. And I know this is the last question, but we can't end without my telling you one of the most fun parts of the Sleep Revolution campaign, which is that I feel so strongly about the subject that because I've created a kind of sleep paradise in my bedroom, I have made it available on Airbnb for one night.
What?
And if you want to participate in the contest, it's free. You just have to write an essay in less than 550 words about how would my day be different if I got a full night's sleep the night before. And the winner will be flown by Virgin America to New York. Spend the night in my apartment. I will provide them with a beautiful Greek dinner in advance with all natural ingredients and a personal sleep consultation. Then I will leave them alone. And in the morning, there will be hair and makeup there to get them ready to appear on the HuffPost morning show to talk about their experience.
Wow. They might be too excited to sleep.